Phillip O'Neill, and welcome to the Power Play, where we talk about maneuvers and strategies about the political landscape and our community. We're connecting the streets to City Hall, the communities to the Capitol, where we break down what's really going on in your city and your community and what can benefit you. You need to know the information, you need to know the knowledge, and more than anything, you need to know the power. Let's get into the conversation. All right, welcome to the Power Play, where we're analyzing the strategies and maneuvers behind today's political landscape. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, for God had not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And I am your host, Phillip O'Neill. And we are here for episode 001, the first episode of the Power Play. And we have an extinguished guest here, my friend, my colleague. He was the founder of the Cohere, right? Changing the way decisions get made with a community first mindset. And he's also our Ohio House of Representatives for the District 24, none other than Dani Isaacsohn. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for this young man, man.
It's good to be here, Phil.
Oh man, look at you, man.
On the Power Play.
On the Power Play. Man, you're like Clark Kent, man. You're like the secret Superman. You know, people don't know who you are. You're just like the man.
I'm not wearing my glasses today, but maybe I should. Maybe I should have been.
Okay.
Incognito.
It's really good to see you, my friend. And
it's good to be here.
It's my first episode, and we were talking about who should be here. And out of all the politicians, all these people that's doing great things here in the city, I said I had to have my guy, Dani Isaacsohn, because we go way,
Once you've
way
lost the sheer number of basketball games together that we've lost, it's a unique bond. Tuesday night, Friday night, Tuesday night, Friday night, just L after L after L.
And just to give people, background to the information, it's actually one of my questions because it's a Cincinnati question. If you don't, so you live in Cincinnati, people always ask you, what high school did you go to?
We are very proud graduates of Walnut Hills High School.
The Walnut Hills High School. And it's crazy that I brought my Letterman jacket here. This is a one-of-one here. This is vintage here, sir. This is, has my name.
I know, I don't have one of those.
Which is crazy that you don't have one of these. I mean, this is a Cook special right here, with the leather on the side,
nice.
Double blocked over here,
I forgot that you were on the golf team.
Oh, what? I was the original Tiger Hood. Coach used to tell me, Phillip, take your hat off. And I'd be like, I just got my hair braided. I'm not taking my hat off. That was the Allen Iverson era, where we were rebels without a cause. So yeah, I was on the golf team. I was the first quad athlete. Golf, bowling, basketball, and baseball. I don't know if I was the first, but that's just something I hang my hat on.
I remember, I think this is right. I've gone back and checked. Your senior year, my junior year. Men's football, basketball, and baseball varsity went 0-60. And there were people, I was not one of them, but there were people who played on all three teams. And I wanted to talk to us about that, but I didn't really want us to go in detail of the record losses. I don't think you needed to say that, but I appreciate you still remembering such things like that. So yes, Dottie and I go way back from, I had to get my wins on the quiz team and ultimate frisbee.
Here you go, man. But that's who you are because, when I talk about you and, representing you, in every space and place that I am, is that I always tell people that Dani is so relatable. You're so relatable. I know you come from, a different maybe status quo than like people like myself, because I'm like those basketball team. I remember when it was, hey, we're going to Donnie's house after the game. And I was like, okay, cool, we'll go to Donnie's house after the game. And then the first time in my life, I entered the Roman Estates. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I was like, oh, this is another tier. And then I'm witnessing here. And I walked into this huge this huge house.
What I loved about that is that it was because that in part that's what going to Walnut Hills gives you access to in part, and like the opportunity to make friends with people from all over the city.
Absolutely.
But even that's not to say every student at Walnut Hills has an incredibly diverse set of friends. A lot of people from Clifton or Hyde Park or Westwood hang out with the Westwood, crew.
Yeah.
Even in high school, but by playing sports, particularly basketball. I mean, when we would get together for practice, people were coming in from sometimes 45 minutes away from each other.
Right.
It was truly like every part of the city.
Right.
Which was nice.
Yeah, I think that Walnut Hills, Searching Mount Summer, such a diverse group of people in that one school. And I think it definitely helped prepare who we are, shape some of our lives. Sure. I tell people to this day that I'm able to go in certain places and places and be a chameleon because of Walnut Hills and experiences that I had even with Sir Dani Isaacsohn.
So I should tell people, because people get confused about this when when they hear from people I went to high school with. People want to know why I go by Dani, but people call me Dani. Mm-hmm. And it is because in high school I did go by Dani, so anyone who knows me then calls me Dani. And there's plenty of people, because it's spelled D-A-N-I, and call me Danny. But my family calls me Dunny, like funny with a D. And so that's how I introduce myself and what I go by. But people get confused by it.
Oh, okay. Well, I've always known the Dani. I know it's spelled D-A-N-I though. So I think that's maybe how it tricks people. So let's get down to it, sir. So knowing you from high school and then seeing your progression, into your life, like, how did you get to politics? Like, what was your dream? What was your goal? Like, how did you enter this space?
My first job in politics was as an organizer on President Obama's campaign in Cincinnati.
Okay.
After college and grad school, I moved home.
His first election?
Reelection, 2012.
Okay.
And I thought I wanted to be a diplomat, and I was studying international stuff, and I just kind of was like, you know what? That feels too far away. It feels too distant from like people's actual lives. I want to go and be on the ground working in a community, where I'm from.
Yeah.
So joined the campaign in Cincinnati, and I caught the bug.
Yeah.
First of all, I loved the work. The idea, the good campaigns, and that was a great campaign, operate on the idea, and they put it into action, that when you bring people together, neighbors, volunteers, community, you can accomplish bigger things than you could do separately. That is the premise of a well-run campaign, that we're going to come together to do this big thing.
Yeah.
And in 2012, we came together to do this big thing, and Ohio was the state.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, we were watching the results of the election on the news, and they called Ohio, and then they called the race.
Yeah.
So because that was it. Once you won Ohio, it was game over in 2012. And so I was all in. I was hooked. I loved the work. I was like, it ends with this huge high that you're changing the world.
Yeah.
So that's how that's what got me.
That's what you want to do. So great transition. You said you were on this high, you guys won.
I've been chasing that high for 12 years.
Exactly. So now that you have won before now, and say you won, you get that high, people voted for you, now you're in your seat. So how to transition from you being in the seat now, where you are now, thinking you're going to do all these mighty and great things? Like, have you seen barriers to now that you're in this seat, or how to actually get work done? Like, explain it at the State House for yourself.
Well, it's sort of interesting. Before you run for the State House, in Ohio at least, a lot of people tell you, why would you do that? If you're going to be a Democrat in a super Republican environment, you're just going to go there, you're going to hit the button to vote no, and then you're going to go home. And, that's not I was told, it's not a great place for if you want to get stuff done or if you care about having an impact. Mm-hmm. Go to where Democrats are in power, which is the city. And so I went in. I knew that I wanted to be in the State House, but I went in a little unsure of whether we'd be able to get anything done.
Yeah.
And I have been so grateful that I actually feel totally different. I feel like we've been able to, even in the super minority, if you're creative and work hard and build the relationships and do the things, like you can get real stuff done that makes a huge difference, even if it's not as nearly as much as you'd like to get done if we were actually in the majority. But I've loved it. It's been way better than I thought it would be.
Good.
And I'm grateful for that.
All right, good. Can you tell us some of the things, some of the work that you guys have accomplished?
So the big things happen. I mean, the biggest thing that the state does, period, is every 2 years it has its operating budget, which, sets the priorities and agenda. And so we did that my first 6 months. I serve on the finance committee that works on the budget. Specifically, I was the lead Democrat on school funding in the House. And we fought really hard to get a major increase in school funding. So not only did we continue what's called the fair school funding formula, but what we did was basically we adjusted for inflation, which they were not going to do without the role of Democrats. And if you don't adjust for inflation, it's over $1 billion less going to schools. And so that was a huge win that we basically said, look, if you want our support on this budget, this is what it's going to take. Now, we have a long way to go still in public education funding. But this is sort of what I mean by you can have an impact if you think about it the right way. Right? Often our job is to keep us floating above water. Right? And sometimes we're treading water, and we would love to be swimming and we'd love to be building. Yeah. But it's a real public service if instead of having a 10-foot hole, now you're on level ground. Right? I think if we were in charge, we could be building mountains. But I'd rather be on level ground than deep in a hole. Right. And so in public education, I think we've been able to do that. And then on healthcare, one of the things that happened during COVID is that the home healthcare system, right, home health workers, people coming to take care of often seniors or people with disabilities, totally broke down. And people just weren't doing it anymore. It was a really dangerous job during the heart of the pandemic. And it's mostly paid through Medicaid reimbursements, and it paid about $13 an hour. And that was a set rate, so you couldn't increase it. So what we fought really hard for during the budget was to get it all the way up to $18 an hour. Okay. Which it stabilized an industry that was cratering. Right. Now, I think it probably needs to be closer to $25 an hour, but 18 is a whole lot better than 13, and it means you can actually keep people in a critical sector. So those were the big things in the budget, but there are dozens of examples of smaller wins. And then a lot of our work is, can we keep the really bad stuff from happening? Right. And sometimes the answer is no, particularly on social issues. We tend to lose those fights. But Ohio has not become a right-to-work state, right? This is still a state where labor and workers and unions have real power and influence, and workers have more rights than they would in other states, and we're investing public dollars in labor projects. And that's not an accident. That takes work and fighting really hard all the time. Right.
Hold on 1 second. I know we're having a great conversation, but I want to send a huge shout out to our sponsors, Barrier to Entry. We are breaking barriers in politics to empower people who look like us so we stay informed about what's going on. Okay, let's get back into the conversation. You said something about public education, and since I come from a background, I've been working in education for almost 15 years. Now, I was in a meeting the other day where the president, Eve Bolton, has said how the state allowed for public to take out trades out of the schools. So is that something that you all could help steer back as getting trades back into public education?
For sure, having pathways to the workforce within public schools is something the state can and should invest in. Does some. Districts have some responsibility for how they choose to use those dollars or structure them. But it's been, I will say, the Governor DeWine and I disagree on a lot of things, but he's been pretty good on a lot of these issues. Okay. And so he is, I think, in the next budget going to continue to focus on workforce issues. The science of reading and childhood literacy was his big push in the last budget. Okay. And we partnered with him to make a major investment in helping make sure kids can read in Ohio. Because it turns out that we were teaching the ways that kids were being taught to read were often not based in the most up-to-date data or science.
Okay. So you're talking about the election. So you're running right now.
I'm up for reelection.
You're up for
November
reelection.
5th.
You're for reelection. That's amazing. So like the 24th district, what district is that exactly? Like who are the people voting specifically for you?
So the district's changing a little bit because of gerrymandering.
Okay.
Which is why we need to vote yes on issue 1.
Okay.
But the heart of the district is sort of downtown, over the Rhine, West End, Mount Auburn, Walnut Hills, Mount Adams, and then it goes all the way west, so the whole west side within the city. So Westwood, Price Hill, East Westwood, Fairmount are all in the district. And then newly, starting in January, so the people voting this year, the district will include Saylor Park, but won't include Mount Washington anymore.
Okay. And that's why you said we need to vote yes on issue 1. Can you tell us a little bit more why we should be voting yes on issue 1?
Yes, I would love to.
All right, great.
Because there's a lot of confusion out there about issue 1. So I want to, at its basic level, every 10 years, states are required to draw new legislative maps. They set, after the census, they set the state legislative maps and the congressional districts. Okay. And every state can choose to do this a little differently. And basically, states are just choosing what do we want to prioritize in this process. Mm-hmm. And often what happens, and both sides have been guilty of this over the years, is that when politicians are directly involved in drawing the maps, they cannot resist the temptation to draw them in such a way that is going to benefit them over the long term. Mm. So gerrymandering is the process where politicians draw district maps to benefit themselves as sitting politicians. So this happened really aggressively starting in 2011 in Ohio after the 2010 census, where, we just said 2012, Democrats won Ohio, right? President Obama won. Right. But starting in 2011, the districts were drawn to disproportionately advantaged Republicans. So we live in a state that today, I think probably realistically leans Republican, right? Maybe 53%, 54% Republican, depending on, who the candidate is. Mm-hmm. So we should have a legislature roughly that looks like that. Right? It probably leans Republican. But right now in the Senate, in the Ohio Senate, it's 26 Republicans and 7 Democrats. We do not live in a 26-7 state.
We do not.
That is because of gerrymandered districts being unfairly drawn to not represent the electorate. So what issue 1 will do is it will take power away from politicians. They will no longer be involved directly in the line drawing process. Give it to independently appointed commissioners, which is modeled exactly after what Michigan did 6 years ago, to draw districts that actually represent the state. And we don't have to guess what will happen. Michigan did this 6 years ago, and they went from having a wildly disproportionate legislature to a 50-50 legislature. Michigan is a 50-50 state. We're going to see it in this presidential election. Yeah. Some years it's a little more Democratic, some years it's a little more Republican. Their legislature is now by 1 seat to Democratic, but it could easily flip, which is what Michigan should have. But the only way you get there is if you have citizens, not politicians, drawing the districts. And so that's what issue 1 will do.
So we need to get people out to vote.
Honestly, there's a lot of
sideline. Right? Come on. This is what you want to say. Come on. Go ahead.
Yes, people need it. But particularly, there's been so much confusion on issue 1. It's one of the most cynical things I've seen in politics, the ballot language.
Right.
There is very confusing ballot language that the Secretary of State put on the ballot to summarize issue 1.
Right.
And it is, honestly, it's just
right. Because you, as a citizen who votes, you need to call people who can help break it down to you. Because if you just go into the ballot, if you just go vote and start reading what's on there, you will be highly confused.
It's meant to be confusing and deceptive.
Right. So people like you who can help break it down for us, we really do appreciate that. So we make sure we got to get people out to vote. Get people off the sidelines and make sure that they are voting.
And when they're voting yes on issue 1.
They're voting yes on issue 1. Yes. Yes on issue 1. Of course, our friend Dani is up for reelection. Is there anything else about this election that you want to talk about at all?
I think, so I spend a lot of my time doing outreach, particularly to young people.
Okay.
And Ohio has really low voter turnout and voter registration compared to our peer states. So Wisconsin, the example I'll give you is actually Michigan. Michigan has about 1.5 million fewer people than Ohio. So we got close to 12 million, they're closer to 10 million. So we've got a lot more people than Michigan. they have more people registered to vote than we do.
Wow.
So that it skews the outcomes in Ohio. Mm-hmm. Right? We have very low voter participation compared to our peer states. Mm-hmm. And that is most acute. The problem is the biggest with young people. Mm-hmm. And so I hear all the time, from young people, well, what's the point? Why should I vote? And so part of it is we need to show up for them. Mm. We need to be in classrooms, in high schools, on campus, engaging with them, hearing them out, listening to them, hearing from them, but also showing up and making our case to them. Mm. So I have been doing that as much as I can. Last year, just in Cincinnati. This year, sort of all over the state. And I've loved it, and it's been really fun. Mm. But people ask me all the time, what's the point? In this neighborhood where I represent, here in downtown and over the Rhine, I have this conversation constantly. Mm. Well, I don't like either candidate. I mean, have you heard that? Do you know people who aren't voting?
Unfortunately, I have, because it's like the lesser of two evils for them. So it's like, I might as well just not even go. And I'm like, nah, that's not good, because it's more than just the presidential election that's going on, especially here in Cincinnati. I mean, it's huge.
Well, and I think part of our job as elected officials is to make the case for why people should be voting.
Right.
So let me see if I can give that a shot here as to why people should be voting, even if they're feeling a little skeptical or cynical. Yeah. So during the budget process I talked about earlier, we had a big fight around what to do with our surplus. And 2 years ago, we had a huge surplus in the state of Ohio. A lot of states had it because of all the federal money. Mm-hmm. So we had close to an $8 billion surplus, which we will not have again probably as long as I'm in office. And we the Democrats, pushed really hard to say we should make sure that every kid in Ohio gets free school lunch and breakfast. Mm. No more tiered systems, no more you got to pay a little bit. Let's just make it's like books and a desk. Kids get food, right. $200 million. So it's, serious price tag, but we had the money. Mm. They thought about it and they said, no, too expensive. We were upset, but we came back and said, all right, fine. How about just breakfast? $26 million, way cheaper to provide breakfast. The breakfast foods are less expensive. Let's make sure every kid can guarantee start the day with a meal. Mm-hmm. And by the way, and this is important, the people making these decisions, the people in charge, Republicans, it's their districts who have this issue more than the districts that Democrats represent. Mm. Because in a lot of districts like Cincinnati Public, a lot of the schools have 100% free and reduced lunch. Right. But it's in the rural schools, particularly in Southeast Ohio, where kids are spending the day hungry because it's not universal. It's not the whole school. It's only some students. Mm. And there's a huge stigma around it. Mm. And I went out to those communities and I invited them to come testify about what it's like to be at school with a lot of hungry students. Mm. And so we thought, okay, let's just do breakfast, $26 million. And they thought about it hard. And then they came back and said, too much money, we won't do it. Mm. We said, all right, fine. How about this? Right now there's full price, reduced price, and free. Let's just collapse reduced price into free. Let's say anyone who's currently paying reduced price, yours is going to be free. It's about 70,000 students across the state, $4 million. Nothing in a $100 billion budget. Wow. They thought about it and they said, fine, $4 million, whatever, yes, we'll give you that. Well, we lost that fight. Mm. But if we hadn't been there to fight it, we wouldn't have made sure that 70,000 kids got food at school. Right. In the losing, we made sure 70,000 kids a day are being fed in Ohio and don't have to pay for it anymore and don't have to deal with the stigma. And that is why it matters who is in these seats. Right. At the state level, at the local level, at the county level, at the federal level, because if it wasn't that specific group of people fighting for that specific thing, as hard as we fought and got creative and kept at it, then you don't get that outcome. Mm-hmm. And so that is happening all the time. Right. And here's the thing I really want people to think about. Yeah. When you don't vote, the people who are choosing to elect the people who don't want to feed hungry kids, they're showing up to vote. Hmm. So you're just amplifying their power. Right. Their vote counts double if you don't vote. Right. And I don't know about other people, but for me, I am not so self-important that I think I get to choose my own cynicism over trying to help those kids. I don't care how cynical or frustrated I am or lesser of two evils. If I think I have a shot at using my voice to empower people who are going to fight for those kids versus who are going to try to keep them hungry, I'm going to take it.
Right.
And I'm not going to let their actions speak louder than mine.
Right.
So that's how I think about it.
Right. It's almost like a power struggle. You know, this is the power play. You're talking about almost like power going back and forth.
Way to bring it back to the title. I love that. Look at that power play.
You see that? So you talk about a power. So what does power look like to you and all of that?
Well, that's the thing. The power is going to exist no matter what.
Right.
Power doesn't. If people don't show up, it's not like the power goes away. It's just someone else gets to wield it and gets to participate in it. The power is there no matter what. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a choice of whether you want someone else's power to go up because you're choosing not to exert yours. And and it's not a one-sided equation. I'm a big believer that once you're blaming the voter, you've lost. Right? It's our job as elected officials to go and make the case, explain to people why their vote matters and how we're fighting for them, even in the super minority, or how we're showing up to be of positive influence for my constituents. It doesn't matter if I'm in the minority, super minority or not. If someone has an issue with unemployment at Jobs and Family Services or Medicaid, we help dozens of those people every month who are reaching out to my office. Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with party, or it's just a good constituent services.
Right. Right.
And so there's all sorts of ways that public service can shake out, but we do need people in those roles to do that work. And the only way you get there is if people vote for them.
Great stuff. So how can people reach out to your office? Like, where's your office? Where's the number? Where's the email? Where can people get in touch with you?
The best way to do it is by email.
Okay.
And it's rep24@ohiohouse.gov, rep24@ohiohouse.gov. Okay. And even if people don't live in my district, right? So if anyone in Cincinnati reaches out, right? So Avondale, Bond Hill, Indian Hill, none of those places are in my district. But when folks reach out from those communities, I will direct them, or my office will direct them to the right state rep.
Right.
So if you don't know who your rep is, feel free to email rep24@ohiohouse.gov, and we'll get you in the right place, particularly for state issues. Okay. When I go to, and I've done this with you on some Sundays, when I am out in the community at churches on Sunday or at community events, people will come up to me all the time with issues. We're dealing with one today from a woman I met yesterday. And that's what public servants should do. That's what your elected officials are for. But it needs to be, hopefully a two-way street.
Excellent. Our 001 first episode, Representative Dani Isaacsohn. Shout out Walnut Hills. We go way back. That's why I wore my blue and gold. Today, you wore my Rachel Ball shoes.
I thought those looked familiar.
Yeah. I was decked out.
Good shout out to Ray Ball.
Shout out to Ray Ball. I want to thank our people here at Black Coffee for letting us use this space and place. So come on down to the corner of Elm and 9th Street anytime. I think he's Tuesday through Saturday, I believe. So we're
It's the best place to take meetings, do some work.
Yes, do some
work. Get him to cater your event.
Yes, he does it all. So we thank my brother Means and Tony Jones for helping us out here for this space. We want to shout out Matos Visuals, who was recording live, and all this great people we have here in this space. So thank you again, sir, for being.
Thanks for having me on Power Play.
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners.
Hopefully the guests just get better from here. That's the only way to go is up.
It's gonna be tough. So we hope everybody gets out to vote. Dani did an excellent job in telling you to make sure that you use your power. Sound good?
November 5th.
Thank you, sir. How do you say?
Wow, handshake.
Oh, man. So official, bro.